Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes. Get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. Maybe we'll have some company tonight. I suspect Eugene will be in. I always appreciate a little bit of company when I do my lives, but I understand. I do my lives later in the evening in this moment, and I suspect everybody is tucked in bed or very cozy with a book and with a pillow prop behind them, enjoying their evening. But if you happen to pop in tonight, if you wake up in the middle of the night, maybe it would be a good idea, right? To sit and just enjoy something. I would like to say light, but my conversations, my content is not always light. Very rarely. There is an undertone. I always try to make it, what is it? Tasty? Is that the word I'm looking? Palatable. There we go. Palatable, because it is in that sharing of information, it is in that social part of us that just doesn't want to be the only person in it, that we have that wish to be belonging to something larger, belonging to something that is a little bit similar to what we are, not necessarily the same, but it is in our understandings, and it is in our own creative and unique ways that we can make some movement, just not for ourselves, but for others if they so choose to hang out. And that's the truth. I've been hanging out with content creators all day today, and not necessarily with my regulars, because I do, like you, have my favorites that I like to hang out with. Oh, and like I said, hello, Eugene. I hope you're having a great night. And you know what? I'd like to say that I am having a great night too, but in that practicing in my genuineness, right? I don't just want to say fine if things are not even keel, balanced in the moment. And that's a good way to express it. It is in that balance that we like to see in our lives from day to day. And, for a lot of what's going on, I suspect I am a little bit wired in the moment. Oh my goodness, tripping over myself. I went to do a little tree hugging. They planted some little trees across the street. So when I go for my walks or to the grocery store and I walk by them, I always stop. And, these trees are only like 5 feet tall and about this thick, and they're all strapped to, I don't know, 2x4s that are planting in the wood, in the ground, just to give it a little bit of support, and that little bit of tree hugging that I love to do. And I truly do love to do. I actually feel it benefits me just as much as it benefits the trees. If it weren't for the trees, in all honesty, I don't think any of us would exist. I'm not sure if there would be any creature on this planet that would exist. That dioxide that they breathe out and that oxygen. So we're just as important to the trees as the trees are to us. It is in that mutual partnerships, right? Again, if we choose, right? I know not everybody is a tree hugger, and I appreciate that. But you have your own things that you connect to, right? That you draw off. That makes it so that you can keep going sometimes, or you can bear a little bit more. That you can delve a little bit deeper, that maybe you could be a little bit more balanced. But what I was going to say in that, this past week, tripping over myself, breaking my favorite plates. Today I spilled a great big, I went for a walk and I went to get a cup of coffee and I spilled the whole coffee down the front of my favorite hoodie and I had to walk home with this great big stain all over my top. And when I came home, I knew I just couldn't take it off and throw it in the laundry basket. So I spent a few minutes scrubbing this great big huge stain out the best that I can because I really do love this hoodie that I thought I had ruined. But yeah, it seems that it's probably okay. It's drying in the bathroom right now, and I'll throw it in the laundry tomorrow, and hopefully it turns out well. But these hiccups, it just seems like it's the season. And it is a serious season of change. It brings me back to when I first woke up to some of these ideas and how unsure of I was in my footing and in the grounding. And I didn't at that time even understand what grounding was. I was doing it, but I didn't understand really what I was doing. I just knew it helped. It made me feel good. It calmed my system. It made me feel balanced in that. But, this week is just like so new, so different, even in the content and the lessons that are being coming across my path, whether it's in the content that I'm taking in, the conversations are so different. And it's not me chasing down the conversations, it is others, right? Approaching me when I was the one doing the chasing before. And it's a really amazing feeling because in that chasing sometimes you chase and you're just hitting walls, or that one person or that one event is so far away that it's almost impossible to make a connection in that. And like I said, this past week has been a little bit strange. But when I said, I went to do a little tree hugging across the street here with that little seedling of a tree. It's not really a seedling. It's about 5 feet tall, but it's still compared to the big elms that it's sitting up against him or in between on the boulevard. It is very tiny. So I just kind of feel I have the good mojo. And, I go touch leaves and touch trunks and trees and give it a little bit of a motivational, right? Because I'm sure they are living. And if they're not living mammals or living beings in any way, they are living. And right, I think we all understand that, that Mother Nature is a growing species in its own right, and we have to take care of this earth. We have to mother it, nurture it, and so I take it upon myself, to do that little bit of tree hugging. But as soon as I did that tree hugging, like as soon as I did it and I took my hand off that tree, I wiped out and scraped my leg and I went, oh my goodness. I couldn't imagine the tree didn't appreciate that little bit of good mojo, but I couldn't figure it out. And a lot of this week is not really figure outable, even though that's, um, uh, I'm thinking of Marie Folio, because one of her quotes is everything is figure outable, right? I call it solvable. Nothing's unsolvable. She calls it nothing is, and I've already forgot it. It has just slipped from my mind. But that is the kind of week that I am having, and in trying to keep it simple, right? I'm trying to keep myself simple. I'm trying to keep things comfortable. Oh, it's just a wrap. It has cooled off here a little bit in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I have been a little bit self-conscious. I had to delete a few of my lives, it seems, that my tank tops are not presentable. I'm showing too much skin, and I recognize that I was, but I was just trying to stay cool. I was just trying to stay comfortable. And I have air conditioning. It's no problem for me. I just needed it to be brought to my attention. And I deleted those few lives that I had, and we carry on in that. And I'm not even gonna check in to see what the lessons were that I missed, because I understand if that lesson was meant to come across my path, I would pull it up. Today I said I was just going to keep the live show short. Maybe even for just the next few days, I might keep it short. But then when I said that before I came live, I thought, oh, but this is just the most prime time to come in and share and keep company. Because if I'm in that mix of the hairy, scary, I'm pretty certain that, right, there's probably a big part of the population out there a little bit bewildered and confused and kind of uncomfortable in that. And if you happen to wake up in the middle of the night, you happen to cross my content, come and sit with us, and maybe we'll feel better, because I do have that distinct understanding that everything is going to be okay, but it's in sometimes that mass hysteria. It's that unsureness and that one trip up, and that just adds to the pile, and then somebody else adds to the pile, and they're just little things, but when all those little things are combined, it turns into a big thing. And right, and then that's when it becomes unreasonable. It becomes kind of mass, and it becomes kind of something that isn't really reasonable, right? It isn't really reasonable. So tonight, because I am working on 3 decks of cards, I don't want to mess the cards up because they're all in synchronicity, and it'll make it difficult for me to get back into that work tomorrow, which is the plan for myself. So what I did is I just grabbed the bottom card so that I could make sure this bottom card goes back onto my working deck and nothing will be messed up. So instead of shuffling the cards, I'm pulling a card, right? I just pulled the bottom card, and we're just going to run with that. And it's a good word tonight, you guys. We have this word commitment. And I think sometimes when we go into those hairy scaries, when we go into those rough spots in our lives, that sometimes we just want to give up. We want to take it easy. We want to go slow. We want to kind of maybe even go into a standstill. Maybe we even want to give up. And that's the truth, right? But we know that, as much as the good things leave our lives, right? It is an ebb and flow. They come back and right? They recede and come back, recede and come back. But so do the crappy things that are in our lives, right? These things don't last either. And sometimes it's just in that commitment to just ride those waves, right? It is in that never giving up. It is in the understanding that everything is going to be okay, right? And whatever their circumstances is in between all that, well, as humans and as somebody that is determined to make that movement and not giving up on what I have put so much effort and work and love, determination, commitment in, I'm not giving up. I'm not buckling down. So when I said before I came my live, well, maybe I'll keep the content light this week. Just go in for a little bit, do my card, and leave. That doesn't serve the way I want it to serve. And especially, if I'm not the only person in the mishmash of activity and changes in my life. And I have to say, you know, Lots of times we have that one trip up, right? And then all we notice for the rest of the day are all the other trip ups. And we don't take into consideration that at the same time, there's good going on, there's calm going on, balance going on, gifts going on, miracles going on, hugs and kisses, right? And that feeling of peace, even if it's only momentary for a few minutes. But because we're so focused on that one bad thing that happened, all we're looking for is the roughness, the things that are not running well. And we totally forget about all the good, right? That fresh connection with one of my sisters, and we have been a little bit separate in our living, in our life experiences, and we are different people, you know and it only is um, noticeable in the change because this was not the norm in our relationship. My sister Tracy and I have always been best friends, but we find, that in our own problems and in not wanting to rub badly on each other, that we've been kind of doing our own thing. And because she's in her own, right, little whirlpool of life experiences, she's been just kind of enduring it on her own. And this week, right, I'm always messaging her. It is in that mindset and it is in that relationship that it is important to me. And I understand it's important to me. And even though sometimes, right, we don't rub each other well, that sometimes we hurt each other, sometimes we snub each other, we are still sisters, and we never deny our own, right? Because in the end, that's all we've got. And so I was very surprised, and I was so happy and so touched that she reached out to me and invited me to go to a movie. And so that was one of the good things in this mix of things that didn't work well. I'm still holding the car. We're getting to the word commitment. This is flowing, so that we're just going to flow with this. But also, there was some good news because the government of Canada has put me on a dental plan, and I'm going to get some work done on my teeth, and it's not going to cost me anything because they've decided to cover my expenses 100%. I'm very grateful for the country that I live in that, takes the well-being of their citizens into consideration. I really feel like, you know, as a country here, we are all connected, and it's in that loyalty, right, to what is being loyal to us, right? That's where I commit myself, right? This is where I build these attachments, and I've got attachments out there, but I feel the feed of new attachments, and I've got to be careful because some of the information and some of the experiences and conversations are not always resonating with me. And I have to remember I am committed, right, to what I'm doing in my movement forward and creating the best human being I possibly can, right? That I dedicated myself and I committed because there's only one thing that can get me to make sure that I don't give up. And it is in that commitment to myself, right? In trusting and being loyal to myself. And then, in order to make some movement forward, sometimes we don't want to do it, right? Even if we know it's good for us, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be probably painful, confusing, agitating, frustrating, but we know it needs to be done. But if we don't commit to ourselves, right, that we give ourselves outs in that. And that's where we can find that maybe we can give up on ourselves, that we can slow down, or like I said, oh, we'll just keep the content light this week. No, I'm just going to show up. If it happens to be shorter, it happens to be shorter. Whatever is needed in the moment, that's what I am committing to, because I committed myself to what I'm doing, and that's the truth. And this is something that I've done my entire life, being let down or feeling like I've been let down or betrayed or rejected or dejected. I always felt like I was moving by myself, right? That I was in it all by myself. It's a different story now, but I felt that way. I truly did. And so when I needed to get things done, or if I knew there was something I really needed to do, like lose 10 pounds, I have to commit to myself, because if I commit to myself, I'm not going to break my own word. But if I don't say, okay, Cindy, you're losing 20 pounds, right? If I don't say that, I leave myself that out. And because it's difficult, because I want that pink ice donuts with the sprinkles, I'll give myself my out. And to me, I would say, oh, it's okay, because I didn't commit to that. Now, let's see what I wrote here. Commitment is the choice that has to happen. You see what I mean when I say sometimes we just have to commit. And even though we can't sometimes uh, commit to social engagement, or in helping friends or family, sometimes I go, oh, maybe, right? If somebody invites you out, oh, maybe. But in your mind, as you're saying that, you're going, no, I don't think so. But if you commit to that, right, there really isn't much of an out, right? At that point, it just has to happen. It just has to happen. So, in this word commitment, the reason I thought it was so good is because in the experiences and the conversations and the content that's coming across my path, right? People are really struggling in what they've committed to. And they're confused because I'm going to assume they see the difference. They see the changes. And, change is hard. Yes, change is hard. But change is necessary. It always is. Even in evolution, every time we went through a new stage, oh my goodness, I have to say it because it popped into my head. They found the oldest Homo sapien um, uh, skeletal remains ever found, and they say Homo sapiens are 100,000 years older than what was documented. And I can't remember where they found was. Oh, it was in Spain. I think they found these remains in Spain. 100,000 years. They estimated that us, right, modern man, Homo sapiens, have been around for 200,000 years. But, right, in being course corrected, we now understand that we have been around for 300,000 years. It's time for a change. It's time to move into our next stage. And I think this is, a big part, itchy palm. This is the next stage of our evolution, and it's important for me. I'm not going to answer for anybody else, because everybody else gets to make their own choices. I can only be responsible for my own choices. I can only commit to myself. I can only commit to make sure that I'm going to be here. I'm going to commit to sharing the same as I always have, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else is going to. All it could do, right, is in that influence, if you can call it that. It's right. I'm not asking anybody. I'm just being here and I'm sharing my experience and maybe in that resonating with what I'm saying, right? Maybe you feel it too, that maybe you'll give it a shot. Like I said, this week, a lot of change going on, a lot of new direction, a lot of new content creators trying to get me to subscribe to their channels. And surprisingly, will subscribe to any channels if I can't see the presenter of the lessons. I need to see that person physically. I really do. I need to be able to feel out a truth for myself. I can't just be dictated through a voice or reading something in a book or hearing somebody say, well, so and so said this, right? I have to experience it for myself. So I'm committing to staying with the thought leaders and the content creators that I have always been following and integrating or reintegrating some of those relationships that I understand that is, you know, things go bad, but things always get better, right? And then sometimes things are going good. And then all of a sudden, right? Like me going to hug that tree across the street that I wipe out and then I read every single problem of the week and then disengage from any of the good that's happening. Oh my goodness, I've lost 10 pounds, back on track. Well, right, we're moving into it. We're going slow, right? But I love my sister. I love my family. They have offered up so much into my misunderstanding, right? And into my lack of movement. But at the same time, those lessons, when I realized them, offered up so much. And sometimes in that trip up, right, we are meant to immerse ourselves in that, to read into it, to feel it, and recognize it for what it is. Because what it is today might not be what it was yesterday. And what it was yesterday might not be what it is next week, next year, or the next lifetime if you anything like me. Commitment. You know, this is a time to buckle down. This is a time to really, right, work on ourselves, take care of ourselves, right? Not only am I dieting, I'm switching up my vitamins. I brought the vitamin C back on board. I have a little bit of a recipe that I do because I am very acidic and to stay alkaline you need a lot of citrus and stuff. And I take the vitamin C, but I'm very acidic. It is a trait that I had ever since my gastric bypass. And so I have found solutions for me to stay alkaline. And one of them is a little recipe I have, and I take some cloves and I put it in the center of a coffee filter and I take elastic band and I wrap it around the top and seal up that ground clove. You can do it with cloves generally. Oh, look at what I just did. I just scratched a mosquito bite. I went for a walk tonight and I got bit. So yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm talking. I didn't even realize I was doing, like I said, right? These little bits of mishaps going on here and there, but it is a mishmash. It is in that amalgamation and assimilation of a bit of the both sides of the extremes, is how I feel that it is, right? And I think that's okay because I think that would be more balanced, right? Than being swung on one in one direction and missing out all the lessons on the other side of the spectrum. This way, I get a little bit of both. And at the same time, I can resonate a little bit with the both, right? It takes all kinds to make the world, right? And that's a truth, and that's something that I learnt long before I woke up to any of these ideas. But it's as true to me today as it was the day that I first heard. I remember the first time I heard that, right? It takes all kinds to make the world. I was working in a retail hardware store. I my life was going downhill, right? Without waking up to any of these ideas. It started without me, and a new company had come in to this job force that I was working for, this company that I was working for, and they started letting go people. They didn't want any full timers, they just wanted part timers. And so they were just letting all the full timers going, just looking for excuses. But because in the sale agreement, right, because the old owner was such an amazing man, he had to retire. He was well into his 80s and he just couldn't do it. It was a big company, he couldn't do it anymore. He just wanted to take care of his staff, and so he just sold the company to another company that promised to keep the staff. That's all he asked. And they did. They did keep that promise as long as you wanted to be part time. But how do you keep a roof over your head in part time? So, what did I do? I made myself as the empath, as the highly sensitive, as the people pleaser, and in that little bit of hypervigilance and that roof over my head. I started multitasking. I learned every position in that store. And that's the truth. I think I did everything except receiving. I did paint department. They called me the little plumber girl because I was doing plumbing. Right? Oh my goodness. Electrical department. I was a cashier. I worked the contractor desk, and that was a hard one. And, I was doing custom bathroom orders. And I did all these positions because, they were cutting everybody. And right, it was so obvious what they were doing because I was losing all my comrades, all these friends, because I had been in this job for years that, you know, I was losing people, and I knew, right, that I rubbed people in certain ways just as much as anybody else, but you're not going to let the person go that could do absolutely everything. This is what I'm thinking, right? And it worked, right? In the end, it was rubbing each other wrong, but at the same time, in that need to keep the show running properly, right? And because I was so exceptional in the customer service, I stayed. I stayed even though I felt unwelcomed because it was the job. Nobody was going to take I was going to leave when it was time for me to leave. I didn't recognize the time that it was for me to leave was when they started doing all that. But in my determination, I became the thorn in that company's side. So I lost track a little bit in where I was doing in that. Oh, yes, that saying, it takes all kinds to make the world. This isn't something that I grew up with. This is not a quote. My dad liked quotes. This was not a quote of his. I learned it in this job, and they had hired this little 16-year-old kid. Oh my goodness. He was sweet. He was funny. But he was, oh my goodness, this kid was lazy. and, and we couldn't get them motivated if our life depended on it, and we needed the help because we were down to minimum staff and we were all wearing ourselves down to the bone. So I'm working the floor, and I was working all the departments. It was a slow night, so I was pretty much, it was like a skeleton crew, and I was working this store, and I saw the cashier, and I'm looking at her, and she's being chatted up by this 16-year-old kid who was sitting on the counter of the till area. When people go to line up to with their groceries, and you got the cashier, it's like this kid was sitting where the groceries go, and he was just sitting there chatting her up. And I'm going, what are you doing? This is not how how you represent this company. Don't you have work to do? He goes, oh, I'm just chit-chatting. I says, yeah, but you're getting paid, right? Go out to the yard, see if they need some help. Go to the sales desk, see if they need some help. Go do some blocking or facing, and this is the way I worked, right? And he just looked at me, but he goes, oh, Cindy, but you know what? It takes all kinds to make the world. And this is who I am. My mouth fell open, and I burst out laughing because it was so true. It was, it's so true because it does take all kinds to make the world. It's in that amalgamation and assimilation of each other that we can only grow to be better, that we can erase one bad habit and replace it by an example of a better good habit. That we are each other's evidence that there is a better way, right? And that we can do it together, that we don't just have to commit to ourselves to get things done, right? That maybe in that accountability to each other, right? Committing to each other, to hold each other up, to stand beside each other, to support each other, that maybe we can get through these rough patches, right? 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, let's just go back to the 1500s because I know for sure it was going on then. Everybody had a role in the village, right? People didn't have money, but there was the baker who would trade his bacon to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith would fix the horse's shoes for them. And this is how each member in a village would contribute, right? And, this is the way that we can keep coming back to ourselves, that we can keep networking, keep joining forces, right? In that work out, we can always go back to way we used to do it, right? Okay, we got this word commitment. Commitment is in the choice that has to happen. It has to happen. I'm right. I'm not going anywhere. So I will be back tomorrow. And I will be back the next day for sure. And next year, right? The next 10 years. I've been here for 10 years. And, I'm not going to say it was an easy ride. Lots of times I had to commit to myself in order to get things done. Nobody was interested in what I was doing. I had nobody to commit to hold me accountable. Grateful over the years that I have accumulated my own little village, that each one of us contributes to that village. And, if you come in on Sunday nights or you come in here and keep Eugene and me company, right? I would be pleased. I would be overwhelmed, right? That you just so decided to join the little village, and it isn't that support, and it isn't committing to keep moving forward, that we will keep moving forward, that we won't give up, right? We'll never give up, understanding that as much as the yucky comes into our lives, the painful comes into our lives, the heartbreak comes into our lives, the frustration, right? The heartbreak, that the joy, the adventure, the experiences, the insights, the understanding, right? And the choices, right? They'll always be there. And we understand, right? As a village, because in that support, we let everybody know when they're falling low. Everything's going to be okay, you guys, right? Everything's going to be okay. And sometimes it actually does ease, ease the, is it suffering I'm looking? No. How about if we just call it unease in what we don't understand? Just keep moving forward, you guys. That's all I'm going to say for tonight. If you can't commit to somebody else, if you don't have anybody to commit, you have to commit to yourself, right? Because if you're anything like me, you won't let yourself down. Okay, you guys, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Oh my goodness, look what I did to myself. Everybody, bye bye.